There just seems like there's a lot of things going on right now. Right? The noise out in culture is just it's just shocking to a certain degree. Right? It's the constant theme of things are wrong or things are great. Fortunes have been made this week and fortunes lost, and tariffs, and should I buy a car now or a computer now? Right? You're just hearing this constant yelling out there in society. And it's starting to get a little bit old, I think. I think a lot of people now are trying to get away from it a little bit. Maybe this weekend, if you're a golfer, the course has finally opened up, but you might just stay at home because the Masters are on and you've been waiting for this day every year. Right? The beautiful green grass of Augusta, just calming the sea, right? The dreams of the summer, you can picture yourself there. A true dream for most of us, right? I think for many, your brains have been on basketball courts or volleyball courts or the ice rink, right? The constant movement of the kids from sport to sport, from club here and tournament there, and now the baseball fields and softball diamonds will be beckoning to you. And maybe to get away from the noise, you just look outside and you see the lawn going from brown to green, and you're pretty excited, right? Your rake in hand, bag in the other, spring's here. There just seems to be always something, right, that are constantly asking for our attention, and it's hard to just slow down. And I do remember, and we can all long for simpler days, right? But I do remember that when Palm Sunday hit in the Christian community and Holy Week began, Christians tended to slow down to a certain degree and focus on this special week. I remember most schools, public and parochial, closing on Good Friday. The town I grew up in even shut down the stores from noon to 3 so you could go to church. You didn't go. I remember my mom not letting me ride my bike on Good Friday, essentially from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. I had to stay out in the house because it's a pretty special day. What I want you to do is to begin Holy Week with the picture that Jesus wants us to see. And I want you to try to start to slow down a little bit and focus on it. Because if you're a new Christian, or if you haven't really thought too much, this is a strange picture to start Holy Week. Right? Jesus on a donkey. And imagine if you've never been to church before and you're here for the first time and we're celebrating this king coming to Jerusalem on a donkey, and you're like, well, that's just kind of weird. And we're waving palm branches and we're shouting a word, Hosanna, but the strangeness and the weirdness of this picture, I think, is really intentional. And that's what we're going to look at today. Because when Zechariah prophesies that picture of Jesus on a donkey, he wanted to send a clear message, that message from God. Jesus wanted people to see exactly what kind of king he was going to be, and this fits the bill. You see, on Palm Sunday week in Jerusalem, it was a busy place. It is Passover. And in the life of a Jewish person, there were 3 big festivals that were called pilgrimage festivals, which meant you went to Jerusalem for this festival. The first one is Passover. The second one is the Feast of Weeks, which we might know as Pentecost. And the third one is the Feast of Tabernacles. That's in the fall. And historians tell us that Jerusalem at this time of Jesus was about 80 to 100,000 people. But on Passover, on the pilgrimage festivals, Jerusalem would fill up to 250,000. Some historians say 1 million people, might be a little high. The way I picture it is, if you've been following the news lately, right, Green Bay in our area is going to flood. A home Packer game is about 80,000 people. They say we're going to flood to 250,000 people during draft week. We'll see if that's true. But that's what happened in Jerusalem. 250,000 people are descending on this area and on the vicinity, and there's a buzz. And you can't tell that so much from the gospel accounts of Jesus going into Jerusalem, but if you know the history of Jesus and what led up to this day, just a few days before this, Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. And not in a very private way, but in a very public way. And so the noise and the fact that the miracle worker Jesus was in town, and you can imagine Jesus, the miracle worker that raised someone from dead, is in town. So the local Jewish people are excited. The pilgrims are around. They're excited. Here comes Jesus, this guy who could raise people from the dead. He's coming into our city. And then if you listen to the Luke account, you saw that third crew of people, right? It was that religious establishment who didn't want anything like this to happen, just the opposite. So you start to see why Holy Week happened and why the pressure started to mount on Jesus from the Jewish leaders, because now these crowds were celebrating. And then that word, right? Hosanna. And I put it up here intentionally like this because Hosanna is not an English word. It's a transliterated word. Maybe you don't know this, like the word karate is not really an English word, is a transliterated word. It's how the word sounds in Japanese. We wrote it in English because it's kind of self-explanatory. Hosanna is not an English word. It's not a translated word. Good Friday, there's another phrase the Greek writers will write. They'll say, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. They keep that in the language in the Greek because it's something very special. It's a Hebrew word, and it must be so nuanced that they just said, we're going to keep it like this. We're going to say Hosanna. And I think when you sing the hymns, you think it's like a cheer at a football game almost. And it's kind of like that. But maybe you'll be surprised that this is what it actually means. Save us. So as Jesus is coming into Jerusalem on the donkey, people are shouting and screaming, save us. And you got to get into the mind of the Jewish people. They felt the burden of the government. They felt the pain of the Roman soldiers and the Roman legions making their lives miserable. They felt the occupation of having those people in their promised land. And so they see this king, Jesus, who they expect to save us from all of that. And then even the palm branches, although they're kind of neat and fun to wave around, when you really dig deep into that, that is a sign of Jewish nationalism too. Right? That's just what they did. They waved them when the king came back from battle, and they waved those palm branches. So you think about this. As Jesus is coming into Jerusalem, he knows that they think he is this military, this conquering hero that's going to save them from the Roman oppressors, and that's what the people think, and Jesus let it happen. He let it happen because of this. Because of this prophecy and this picture. And when you see the prophecy and when you see the picture, you realize that there's a great paradox here. Palm Sunday is going to be the opposite of what you'd expect it would be. And although it's not all that surprising for someone to ride a donkey, even a political figure, even a king, but when you ride a donkey it says something different than someone who's coming after conquering a nation. Riding a donkey symbolizes someone that's going to be coming in peace. And some writers even say that this riding the donkey was a miracle in of itself, right? Luke says it's a donkey, a colt that's never been ridden. And if you're a farmer, if you have horses or donkeys, you know that if a colt has never been ridden, you don't just jump onto it and calmly ride it into town. It's probably not going to let you do that. Right? The fact that it was a calm animal that didn't buck Jesus off in of itself may be a miracle. But I want you to think of the opposites here and think of the picture of this and what Jesus comes to bring. Because he's not looking like a victorious king coming out of battle. Instead, the picture is a humble king bring peace. Right? He is not being surrounded by all of the elite. Instead, he is surrounded by just disciples who were, most of them, just simple fishermen. His victory is not going to be because of his power and might and the shedding of his enemy's blood, but his victory is going to be him submitting himself and his own blood be shed. Right? This picture of Jesus is not someone with a scepter in his hand like a king and a gold crown on his head and wearing the royal robes. The picture of Jesus is going to be nails in his hand, stripped of his clothes, in a crown of thorns. Right? Jesus is not going to descend from the donkey and ascend upon a throne to rule over everything. No, King Jesus is going to descend from the donkey and ascend the cross and to die for everyone. Right? This picture on Palm Sunday and what Zechariah wanted people to see was one that was going to be opposite of what they thought. And if people really saw a king riding into battle on a donkey, they would say, that guy is going to get slaughtered. And that's the truth. And that's what Jesus was going to do. There's an interesting way that Zechariah speaks today. See, your king comes to you. When you know that's Jesus, there are two other ways that you'd think the writers would write in the Bible. Either Jesus will come to us, right? And you start to think about that, like when people hear Jesus is coming, like it's presently coming, and we're talking about Jesus, like either he will come to us on Judgment Day, but they don't say that. And maybe Zechariah would say in the Old Testament, Jesus, right, is about to come, and that's going to be fulfilled in Jesus coming, but they don't say that either. They don't say he has come. They don't say he will come. What do they want us to see by that? I think the writers want us to see both. Theologians talk about this with the Christian faith. It's the already, but not yet of the Christian faith. Right? When we celebrate Palm Sunday, we look at Good Friday and Easter Sunday this week, we know that Jesus has already taken care of what we need. We have been declared not guilty. We have been justified. Our sins are forgiven. They were forgiven 2,000 years ago. But we're not yet glorified. Jesus has already taken care of what we need to make sure that we are connected to God, that we are reconciled, that we are at peace, but we are not yet in heaven. And I think the struggle for Christians today, and the struggle for us today, is we want to bring the not yet to the present. Yesterday, I was with one of our members who is going to be seeing Jesus soon, and he said to me, we all want to go to heaven, just not today, Pastor. Yeah, that's the already and not yet of the Christian faith. And when the not yet is way too far in advance, and when the not yet seems so far because the present is so bad, it starts to make us lose a little bit of a sense of our faith, a little bit of sense of God's carrying and God's providence. Or even when the present seems so good that the not yet doesn't matter. Right? That's the other side of this coin. That my life is so great, I have so many things going on and so busy that I can't even wait to think about the not yet because life is too good at the present. Well, that's not good either. What Palm Sunday wants us to do is to slow everything down and to do what the prophet said, see, right? He's having us look and focus our attention on what is going to happen here the next days. And I know that's hard. It's not impossible, but it's hard, right? I can't shut off my phone for a week. I can't not go to work. I can't not look at emails or answer them. I can't not take my kids where they need to go and pick my son up from over in Burlington on Wednesday. Right? I got to do all of those things, and you probably have a bigger list than mine. That's just called life. But we can slow down our minds each day and focus some attention each day for this week to see the picture that Zechariah paints for us. That as we begin Holy Week, see your King comes. In that picture, the opposite of what you think is what's going to happen at the cross and on the resurrection. He comes a king victorious yet humble. He comes a king in battle that seems like he's going to lose, but he will win. And all of that already done, not yet in heaven, but the now means that we will forever be connected to him. See Jesus, your King, this week. See what important and special he is. Trust, believe, and with the people today, right? We shout and we sing and we are happy. Our King has come. Amen.